Hear me, Jerry, but perhaps you can hear me now. Good evening, folks. This is the second in a series of presentations aimed at folks who are new to modelling, who may be inexperienced in modelling, or perhaps more significantly for folks in our sort of age group, returning to modelling and trying to catch up with what's new in the hobby and what's overtaken their old FX 70-second scale skills from the 1960s. The first presentation focused on basic tools and construction techniques. And with a presentation like this, there's a limit to what we can actually do and get you to do. But the idea was that we get folks to put a little bit of glue on plastic and start cleaning up a few joints and that sort of thing. We're moving along this time towards the next stage, which is painting, decaling, and finishing. As we had said last time, and as you heard earlier on this evening, we're a club of over 200 members, some in the ACT and some based further afield, our associate members. With all of the experience that we bring together between us, the idea of joining a club gives you the very best opportunity to pick up hints and tips from other folks. We have the meetings, we have the website, we have social media, emails, and we also have some very valuable sponsors by way of some of the manufacturers and some of the traders that are members and contribute significantly to the operations of the society. So in short, if you're new, inexperienced, or returning to modelling, you're in the right place. Over to you, Steve.
I wasn't expecting that, but anyway, I'll take over from here. Yeah, so that was the introduction to tonight's session. I mean, if you want to ask a question or something's not clear, just put up your hand and interrupt. That's not a problem. We're not saving questions to the end because you'll probably forget and we may forget. Anyway, so preparation. We covered the basic construction bits of putting together plastic last week, but we also did mention that there are some bits of an aeroplane or a tank or a ship where you may need to paint it before you put it together. There's a couple of, I've got an example cockpit here for a P-38 in 48 scale. Happy to talk to people after if they want to ask me questions about that one. The thing is, if you're new or coming back to or trying to work on a model that you haven't got experience before, pick something that's reasonably straightforward, something where the color scheme, it's not an Italian with circles or anything that has multiple colors with lots of swirly patterns. Or don't go for one of those. You may be able to handle it. It could take you longer, but I would suggest going for something that's one color on top, one color underneath, and hopefully for a tank that's just one color, right? You can then dirty it up. But that's just me, right? So pick something where it's likely to be simple for you, where you may already have the paints that you've used. One of the things is, do I have the paints that I need to make this model that I'm working on? Many times I've been out at Toy World and people buy a kit, open it up, and then start talking to the staff about what do I need to buy paint-wise to go with this kit. That's always a good idea. So have an idea about the colors that you're going to need. The other thing is, and I've got examples here, sometimes there's sets, like this is British colors from World War II, US colors from late US Navy, colors from World War II, Soviet aircraft, 1950 to 1970, right? These little sets do make things easier for you, but you're never going to get everything you're going to need, right? So always check that you've got the paints you're going to need, also the kind of paint that you're using. I mean, these days, you've got choices of acrylics, which are the true acrylic is a water-based paint, or hybrid, where alcohol is the solvent, the thinning agent, or you've got enamels, which are probably the ones that most people who have been building models for many years are familiar with, and now you've also got lacquers. There is a presentation on our website about the chemistry of painting and how all those different kind of paints can work together well by Nathan Bradford, who is one of our judges. I would recommend watching that presentation, going to our YouTube website on YouTube and looking for it. This is all about if you've got all the same kind of paint with the colors that you need, it's going to be straightforward. But if you find that there's a particular color from a different series of paints, just get an understanding what's it going to do when I apply it over the other paint that's already there. Just reading. Oh yes, please, Dave. Please take over.
The issue of accuracy of colours is, and we're not going to get deeply into the philosophical side of things, but the question is, if you want to make a model, what do you want? Do you want it to look really pretty, or do you want it to look a bit like a scale model of the real thing? And the issue of accurate colours, accurate model colours that match the specified colours that were used on the original equipment, and sometimes we're talking about the Second World War and even earlier. There is always a question of does it look right? Have I got the right colour? Can I get the right shade in the colour? In the group of colours that I like, with the manufacturer that I like, and so on. And what Steve says is absolutely true. Don't pick something which is overly complicated. If you are happy to build a model out of the box, then you can use the references in the instruction sheet, and that will tell you if it's an RAF aircraft, it was dark earth and dark green, and it was sky or light grey or whatever it was underneath. And you can quite easily go to almost any chain of paint manufacturers and you can get matching colours. There's a theory that we won't go into about scale effect of colours. Should a colour on a 72nd scale aircraft be exactly the same shade if you held it up to the full-size airplane? And the question is, do colours fade if the real aircraft was far enough away to look like it was 72nd scale? Then would the colours look darker or lighter than those on your model? So we can go into all of that, but we're not going to, because it's much too complicated and it's wishy-washy, and
it's back to basics.
It's back to basics. Yes, it's back to basics. So look, the question really is, are you going to buy a model and build it out of the box because you just like the look of it, or have you got a deep-seated interest in some really unusual and uncharted color schemes that might take you a long time to find out the details on and to get the right colors on? If you're getting back into modeling, try not to make it too complicated, because it's complicated enough already. Back to you.
Are there any questions from the audience? You really? Okay. So I'm going to skip this bit because we've spoken about selection, more or less, I think. Tools. Not us, the tools that we would be using. To paint or apply decals. So oddly enough, brushes are going to be needed. Sometimes you can get a set of different brushes. That one that's bent is supposed to be bent. It's for applying paint around corners. No, it's anyway. So the brushes, the different size, the kind of brushes, if you're applying them. And for the detail work, it's still best to use a brush, right? For the other work, there's airbrushes, right? So these two are examples of double action airbrush, where you press down to get the airflow and then you can move. I don't know if you can see me doing this. Can you see it? It's actually, what that does is it moves the needle at the front of the brush and changes the width of the spray. This one has the paint jar underneath the flow of the air. This is an old Page VL. This one, which is sold by Pete and Runway 13, very recommended brush. A message from our sponsors. So anyway, this one has the paint above. It makes it easier to use and also easier to clean. I love using this. Again, it's double action. You press it down, get the air flowing, move it back to actually get the paint moving through the airbrush. The thinning of the brush, the paint, so that actually works well with the airbrush. We can't actually demonstrate that. I don't know whether we had permission to bring in dangerous equipment and start blowing anywhere. I have got a compressor here, right? Little compressor. That's all you need. It's turned off because it's got a little bit of an air supply in there. But as soon as you start using, you'll see it'll come back on again, right? Again, this little gizmo is a. Would you mind holding this for me?
Of course.
To my mouth. That's very good. Right. Carefully, not too much. So you can get an attachment so that you can use different airbrushes. Quick action. Move on to the next one. And we're off and running and painting as long as we've got the right kind of mixture in the paint. But Dave, did you want to add anything about? I think
many years ago. How many of you remember the old Scale Models magazines and a fellow called Ted Taylor? He was a yes, at least a couple of people almost as old as I am.
very old.
I bumped into Ted Taylor at Hannant's in London quite a few years ago, and I'd going through a bit of a modelling blot, and I just could not get back into spraying. And he said, "Dave, it's very simple. When you're using a spray gun, you hang a piece of paper, hang a bit of blotting paper or something up on the wall in front of you. The idea is to be able to sign your name on that piece of paper. If you can get the spray down fine enough to do that, you'll be able to spray any model. And it's a trick that I've still not quite perfected, but I understand what he's getting at. He said the fineness is the key. And if you can spray finely, then you can spray widely and you can fill in gaps, you can overspray, respray, and all the rest of it. It is very much a question, though, of trial and error with the paints that you want to use, the thinners that work best with those paints, and the pressure of the airflow. The other thing I'd say is, while in Canberra we have a generally dry climate, make sure you have an air separator like this, a water separator, so as to make sure you don't get little blobs of water coming through with your paint, because it does not mess things up. Ray, what's his name? Not Ray. He said, Ted. Said Ted. Yeah, Ted. Ted said there are really only three conditions. They are the pressure, the aperture of the nozzle, and the distance that you are from the surface. And you can vary those depending on what you're spraying, how easy it is to get at, and well, how complex the scheme is, I suppose. But it's those three variables that make the difference. Remember that the key thing is if you can spray down almost thin enough to actually sign your name, then you've got all the skills you need to be able to put paint in the right place on a model. Yes, out of interest, we were talking before about picking something simple. The beauty of an airbrush really is that you are painting the subject model in the same way that the full-scale subject was painted. It is entirely possible that with time and expertise and a good understanding that you can replicate the painting process. From my point of view with model aircraft, there are some operators, some air forces that paint using mattes so that you get a hard edge to the color scheme. There are others that always actually make a point of blending the colors. In the USAF tech order for painting their aircraft around the Vietnam period, they said that the colors needed to be blended over 12 to 15 inches. That's 12 to 15 inches is that big on the real thing. So that means you've got a very indistinct difference, a borderline between colors. So make sure you understand what the real thing was painted like, and then use your airbrush to reproduce that. If you need to mask it, then mask it. Use masking tape, or as I tend to do, blow up, if it's 48 scale, blow up the drawing, the camouflage scheme to 48 scale, make yourself a set of templates for left and right, top and bottom, and you've got to fiddle around a bit to get around the curves and so on. But and then apply that one coat, mask on where that coat should be, and then I just use paper or card masks that I hold down with little rolls of tape that I roll over on each other, just hold them down. They lift it off about 1 millimeter so that you get a slightly feathered edge, which is my idea of an accurately represented finish. But if it's 12 to 15 inches, then you can lift it up. You can probably do it like with this one, the F84. That those were painted without masking and without adherence to an exact pattern, and the edges along there are a fair bit more feathered. Although interestingly, on the Dutch ones, they had a hard line between the upper surface and the lower surface colours. Again, it's a question of knowing the subject, but it's all reproducible with an airbrush and understanding how it was done in the first place and trying your best to reproduce that in scale.
Thanks, David. Camera, come over here. We're still with David? It's okay. I'll just talk. So just continuing on from what Dave is saying, the actual process using a paintbrush versus using an airbrush, the amount of extra material you're going to need for masking, for mixing, for cleaning. Whereas with a brush, depending on what kind of paint you're using, it's either mineral tubes or methylated spirits or water. You clean it, you move on. But to actually use, and I have seen it done, using brushes on large, like aircraft, a 48 scale Typhoon, for example, it is possible, but it does take particular care in the kind of consistency you have in your paint and your ability to control the edge. Again, you can't avoid masking as far as I'm concerned if you're using more than one color. So the skill and something that you're going to have to practice isn't just about understanding about the application of the paint, but it's also about how best to mask it so you don't get run underneath the masking agent, or to get a feathered edge rather than a hard edge, and how accurate it is. I mean, I wouldn't try to measure a 48 scale 10 to 12 inch blend. Just as long as it looks like it's blended, it's going to be okay. Okay. So, but again, to me, it's a skill, and one thing I've learned: skills improve with practice. So, at some stage, you need to start and you need to keep doing it. So, we bring the very first meeting we had where we talked about back to basics. You need a space to set up and have it set up, and you need to make time to do it. But anyway, so we did talk about double action airbrushes. A single action airbrush basically means you're pressing down and the air flows. To change how the needle is positioned, and therefore the spray, the thickness of the spray, you actually manually have to move the needle in and out, which means, whereas this, you can change it as you're spraying, right? With a single action airbrush, you apply it, then you need to stop, adjust it, apply some more. So anyway, these are all things that you will learn if you choose to use an airbrush for painting your model kits. And I mean, we both work on aircraft, but tanks, ships, it's the same. Right? What have we got? Decals. Are we ready to move on to decals, or shall we talk a bit more about painting? What do you think?
I think we could talk. There's a couple of other aspects to consider. I'm intermittent with my modelling, and I find if I have had a long time away from spraying, it takes me a little while to get back into it. It is important to have, and for me, I use enamels. I'm perhaps the only one in the room that does. But if anyone else use enamels? Oh, good. Thank you. There's at least 5 of us. But the important, yes, the enamels club. The important thing about enamels is they smell, and you need to use petroleum-based thinners or hydrocarbon-based thinners, and you almost cannot possibly do it anywhere else in the house where anyone else is going to live or eat or try to go to sleep. So you need to find a space in the garage. You need to have ventilation, and which just can mean an airflow, a door at the front and a door at the back, and perhaps a little fan. But you do need to pick the spot, which means that it's not like just sitting down on the kitchen table, popping open a tin of paint, getting a brush out, putting a little dab of paint on, and then closing up and going to bed. You really have to plan how you're going to do it, and it's quite a game to get yourself into the swing of it, and to feel that you've had a productive process where it's taken you an hour and a half from you started, but you've only spent 5 minutes actually spraying. So be aware of that, and try not to get too dispirited by it, because it's all too easy.
Oh, okay. Thinners. Did you want to talk?
Do you want to talk about it? Because I have a I always mix the paints in the cup that they're going to be sprayed from. Although sometimes I'll mix them out, and then if I'm going to use a lot, I'll top them up. But I use a patented process, which is an approximate level of thinners in the cup and a number of scrapes of brush-based paint. It's a ratio that even I can't calculate, but I know what works for the particular paints. I'm afraid I can't do any better than that.
Just a very important note: if you're going to mix the paint and thinners in the airbrush, make sure you put the thinners in first.
Yes, absolutely.
Never put unthin paint into the paintbrush before you put the thinners.
Yep. Another way of measuring whether the paint is thin enough, I've read this and it has to have the consistency of milk. I think light milk, not full cream. Anyway, yeah, it's true.
And certainly not yogurt.
No, not yogurt. Actually, if you put unthin paint into, yes, I can see Lorna has a question all the way down there.
I'm not being disparaging. They're very valid questions, and I ask myself all the time, why do I do it? I do it out there because I really can't do it anywhere else. If I've got airflow going through, yes, I've got doors and the garage doors cracked open 6 inches, and there's a door at the back. And yes, I'm vulnerable to all the points that you raise. I haven't got an easy solution for it, but you can put a cover over the model once it's sprayed, and leave it where it is. It's no better trying to let a model dry inside. It still smells out the whole house. So dust is an issue. And I haven't got an easy answer for that. You just have to be as careful as you can. No, I haven't got a way of suggesting. I haven't got an answer for you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yes, Ray.
I was just going to suggest the easiest thing to protect against dust, and it's easier for small models, is just like a plastic container.
Yeah, just put it in. I don't use a lot of enamels. If I do, I just leave the window open. It would be great if we all had spray booths and all that. Ultimately, is that better, Shane? Follow me, you stupid. Sorry, no. Yeah, so it would be good if you had the equipment, and that's the thing. Setting yourself up, having the equipment, being able to leave it where you need it so you can go back to it when you're ready. That's always going to make things a lot easier for you to continue improving your skills and using the different paints and applying decals. Yes.
I do have one little trick, actually, Lorna, while I think of it. A little bit of advertising here. If you've never been to ex-government furniture here in Camperton, go and see them, because they tend to sell ex-government furniture, and you can buy clever little cabinets with sliding doors. And I've got a number of them in the garage, and I will usually open one of those up. When I've finished spraying, I can slip the thing in there and slide the doors closed, and that's a reasonably protected area for the paint to dry. It is a particular thing with enamels because the time that they take to dry. Those. Well, we all have our little tricks, I'm sure.
Ray.
Ray, sorry.
Just touching on about thinning. A lot of the advice that I've heard is that people don't thin their paint enough. Some people use a rule of thumb of 50-50 thinner to paint, but a lot of experienced technicians still think you should be nearing a ratio more 30 paint to 70% thin. It's quite a thin layer, and multiple thin coats
Yeah,
is a better.
yeah. I was just going to mention if you do use that approach, then you need to have the patience to apply more coats to get the density of the paint. Look, with this, it depends on the paint, depends on the thinner, and depends on your airbrush and the practice. It's a skill, so you need to practice it. I tend to have old jars of either Tamiya or Gunzi or whatever, clean them out and then use those. Or you can buy little plastic jars. Maybe start with 50-50 and see how that goes. Right. The idea is you if it gets too thick in your airbrush, then you've got to stop. You've got to tear the airbrush apart, clean it all up, and go back to one. So better to have more thin than thick.
I think acrylics are a bit less forgiving on the side of things, and
They dry very quickly. And
some will tip dry.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can often be addressed by just increasing
The thinner.
the thinner.
There's other tricks you can use. There's retarder, like it slows down the drying process. But we're going into esoteric stuff now that basically find a way of mixing the paint, trying it out. Exactly.
Yeah, it is a question of finding what. I'm sorry. Yeah. It's that's sort of fairly well quoted. You know, it needs, as we said before, that it needs to be about the consistency of milk. The I've got to say, well, as we've said before, really, find out what works for you, and it's a question of trial and error. Make sure, if we haven't said this before, make sure you've got an old model to work on. I have got two old, or the wings and the fuselages of two old monogram 48 scale Focke-Wulf 190s that must have had 25 different color schemes on them. You can't see any of the details because it's all paint, but you can always give something a try. Don't for God's sake try something first on your brand new model. Always give it a test run.
Ray had another.
The other thing I'd say just quickly is Jerry here? Where's Jerry here? Jerry is okay. Jerry, those of you that know that Jerry started the idea of blitz builds, where you start building a model at 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, you have to have it finished by dawn on Monday. Don't bother joining those games if you use enamels, and I know that from bitter experience. You will never finish a multicolored enamel painted aeroplane in that amount of time. Don't bother.
So, Ray, was there something else?
Just before you leave,
Yep.
painting. And you made a couple of these in the first workshop, which I didn't have.
Yep.
It's really thinking about your construction phase in terms of sequence that you might need to paint things in, and not just slavishly following instructions. So if you come to that, I apologize.
Oh no, that's okay. It's good to have a reminder. Paint the cockpit before you put the
Because obviously the kit manufacturers will have an assembly sequence that makes it simple to construct the model, but often it will complicate painting of the model to follow those. So you'll be thinking about the actual sequence of how many painters once it's glued together or put inside or joined up or whatever.
And there are, the next step around decals, sometimes there are decals you need to apply before you put some parts on the plane. Anyway, good points. Very good points. Yes.
I'm just nicked it off him again. It is a very valid point, particularly when you're spraying. From my own point of view, there's a few do's and don'ts. The old adage of painting lighter colours first is very, very true. If you do black propellers with yellow tips, paint the yellow tips first, then mask them off, and then paint the rest of the propellers. Similarly, with this, as I've just noticed here on the Typhoon, with the faint, the very thin yellow leading edges, paint the camouflage on, and then use masking tape to separate off the area that needs to be yellow, and then paint the yellow. Don't paint the yellow first and then try and mask off a strip of yellow that's going to be 1 or 2 millimeters wide. It's just not. It's not possible to do it without it. It's very difficult to do and to make it look neat. It's easier to mask something where you can see what you're doing rather than paint it and mask that paint off, if you see what I'm getting at.
Lachlan has a...
Yes, absolutely. And actually, the other thing that we haven't really touched on is primers. Primers serve a number of purposes. Not least is to make sure that your top coat stays on, but it also makes sure that any construction flaws that you might have unknowingly left show up, and you can correct them before you put the final coat on. And make sure that you know. Make sure you know what is your favourite primer.
Who's your daddy? Anyway,
Yeah.
so sorry, there's a...
In preparation for decals, would you paint a clear coat? Are there any tricks?
I use enamels. I use extra colour enamels, and for those of you who are 100 years old like me, you'll remember they came out as something in the late 70s or 80s. The brilliant idea of making authentic coloured paints gloss, so that you didn't actually have to gloss your matte paints to put your decals on. You could just put your decals on and then matte it down. It doesn't quite work like that. Even though I use gloss enamels, I always put on a gloss coat first, because it levels everything out, and it helps to accommodate that unavoidable slightly feathered edge at the edge of at the join of two colours. If you if you've got that, we say grey and green here, like on a Typhoon, then put a gloss coat on first, then the decals, then another gloss coat, and if it's going to be a matte finish, then a matte finish on top of that. So it's multiple layers, but it really is airbrushing at its best. It's the best medium. It's the best method, I think, to use to get that sort of effect. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, John.
Question about the gloss coats.
Yes.
So how thick are the gloss coats? How thick should they be?
Just enough?
Sorry. Okay, so the question was, how thick should the gloss coat be? So the thickness of the gloss coat is the consistency of the gloss paint, the gloss coat, right, should be the same as the paint. So it should be not too thick, right? Because all you want to do is make sure that you have a nice even surface. People have heard of the term silvering of decals. What happens is, because a gloss paint has a very flat, it's not flat, as it's literally glossy but level finish, which means the decal will not have any air bubbles trapped underneath it. That's what causes the silvering. So what you need is something that just basically gives that finish over the top. Now, the only way you're going to have to apply more than one gloss coat before you apply a decal is if you use really, really rough matte paint, and so then you need more gloss coat to make sure there's no valleys. I mean, if you were to look at the surface of matte paint through a microscope or something like that, you'd see it's not flat. That's why the light doesn't reflect off it. Right? So hopefully that's answered your question. You need a complete coat of the model with the gloss coat, and it needs to be able to be a level surface so that when you apply the decal, no air can get trapped underneath it. With that, the application of decals, solutions, the Microsol and Microset, Microsol, there are other solutions now, Mr. Mark Fit or Anatomy, I think. What that does is it actually, so the microset is about cleaning the surface and allowing the decal to sit without moving too much. So you've got just enough time to make sure it's positioned properly. Then apply a bit more set, right? The microsol actually etches away the film that the decal is on. It so basically it removes the carrier material and all that's left. So a decal is basically painted on carrier material, right? So what the solvent does is it removes some of the, well, it depends on how thick the decal is, right? But it removes it so that it looks more like it was painted on to the model.
Do you have to, then after you apply the solvent, do you have to cleanse that off?
No. The question was, do you need to clean the solvent off? No, you just let it dry. Because what you want, Ray, what are you going to add? Yep. I leave it a couple of minutes, 5 minutes. I don't know. These days, I make myself go away, make a cup of coffee, do something that takes more than a minute, right? So when I come back, I know the decal's not going to move when I start putting the solvent on it, because that pisses me off. It pisses my, anyway, whatever. So yes, I mean, basically use the set to get the decal sitting where you want it to, and you'll see it'll start to go into the recesses and all that kind of stuff. When you start applying the micro sol, sometimes decals will start to they look like crinkle, right? What's happening there is that the actual material that's the carrier is starting to be etched away. Don't panic. Don't start pressing down on it. Whatever you do, leave it alone. Come back and it'll magically look like it's been painted on, depending on the quality of the decal and everything. Anyway, all this is about, it's going to take more time than just putting a kit together. When I first started making models, 50-cent FX P51 Mustang in a bag, take it home, glue it together, put some paint on it, done. I didn't put any explosives in it. I don't know, some of you probably blew them up. But anyway, but this is not what we're talking about now. What we're talking about now, first of all, you're buying a kit for I don't know how many tens of dollars from hundreds. So you need to take your time. And as Dave says, practice on something that isn't the kit itself if you haven't done it before. Did you want to add anything to the decal?
I've got a couple of ideas on decals. This F-84 that I've got at the front here is a typical NATO jet of the 50s. I'll pick it up. A typical NATO jet of the 50s. It's covered in little bloody decals. There are dozens, if not hundreds, on that, from those funny little symbols to instructions and maintenance instructions and so on. But what I was going to say, particularly in regards to decals, is if you do use a setting or a softening solution, then once the thing is dry, go over the top of the decals with a very soft brush of water and wash off any remaining. And it might be the decal adhesive. It might be any sort of stains associated with the other fluids that you've used. Because if you don't, and then you put your clear film over the top of that gloss or matte, if there's anything there that shows up, it's gonna be there forever. You can't get rid of it once it's got the matte or the gloss over the top of it.
You could start again.
Yeah, you'd have to go back and start again, which is always lots of fun. Yeah. So yeah, don't be afraid to wash the thing down. I suppose water. Yeah, but with water. Yes. Yeah. That's right.
And Mike, the blue one, micro set, can also be used to remove decals as well.
Okay.
Before gloss coat. So if you find it's in the wrong spot, floated or something, it's all dry, you'll come coat to that. Cotton gloves, paint brushes, remove under it, it'll lift.
And while we're on the subject of subsequent action, if you like, these will all tell you that if you've got a bit of silvering across perhaps an engraved panel line where the decal hasn't sunk right in, then prick the decal with a pin and run a little bit of this, and it'll get inside. And if it can, possibly, it will. If anything can, it will soften the decal and suck it down into the panel line, and that silvering effect will magically disappear. Magic.
Doesn't always happen.
No, that doesn't always happen. No, the best laid decals. Yeah.
Put that gloss coat on there. Sorry, this has been very enjoyable.
This has been very interactive, and we do appreciate it, because it makes us feel that we might be raising the right sorts of ideas. Has anyone got any other questions?
It's not only a 101 question. If I'm applying, if I've built the model, I'm applying the decals, can I just put a localized gloss where I'm applying the decals and then put a gloss coat over the entire model afterwards?
My experience, and it may be particular to the paints that I've used, but my experience is that just a localized bit of gloss can sometimes produce a slightly different shade of the camouflage color underneath. So if you're going to do anything, if I'm going to do anything, I'll do the whole thing. I understand the value or the attraction of the idea. I'd be wary of doing it though, because you might just get a localized color change.
Yes.
Spraying varnish, airbrush or
So I've tried both. I find the airbrush, you control the flow and the how thin the gloss coat is. What's in the can is in the can, and sometimes, unless you're really quick, you get too much in an area as you're trying to move across. Right? It's just, look, if you've practiced it and you're good at it, it works okay. Again, depending on whether you're applying something that's a lacquer or an enamel versus an acrylic. Right? Acrylics are a lot more forgiving, but then they dry very quickly as well. So unless it's a very large area and it's not a small kit with small bits that can attract, like you can get blobs forming very quickly. I've done it with propellers, believe me. I've stopped doing it. So yeah, look, it's just a matter of, well, how big is the surface, and how confident am I that I've got the right distance and I'm good at doing this. Sorry, yes.
So if we use airbrush and varnish,
Yep. So are you saying this, or are you asking me? So I tend to use an acrylic gloss and an enamel matte, and that's why I've got two airbrushes. Right. So this one is for my enamels. You can use both, right? But you've got to clean it. And if you're using an enamel, you're going to use some sort of mineral terps to clean it. And then you've got to wait, right? Because you're not going to start throwing in another different kind of paint. So just don't, like with airbrushes especially, you don't want to have some chemical reaction going in there because you're using a lacquer and an enamel and an acrylic. So try to avoid that. And one way of doing it is, so use this for most of the painting that you're doing, and maybe a can for any final work. As long, again, yes.
Perhaps my response to that question is, No. I can do that too. But my analogy is, rattle cans like watering roses or fire hoses. Yeah, so that's the lack of control you have.
I don't like roses, but anyway, yeah.
Just an observation, just one of the latest things I've heard. Had a tail band on the vehicle, designed for the kit, but still just a little bit too big, so it started crinkling up and whatever. I washed it with Microsol for 3 days after having the vehicle a few times to make it fit, until it actually something that you need to do right now. Microsol will actually work.
Over time, yeah.
So washed it for 3 or 4 days, and then before it all just went stuck.
Yeah, persistence is something that modelers do learn. Yeah. Anyway, so yes, so Microsol does work, but sometimes the decal's thicker than you would like it to be. Ben,
Canopy frames on this plane here are yellow and red. Are they painted or are they decked?
Those, if I recall, are decals.
You can put decals over a clear canopy without.
Yeah, I might have been sheer ass, but I did, yes. Look, they, you can buy. You used to be able to buy sheets of black, white, red, yellow, and black of various thickness. I got the thinnest yellow. On the real thing, they were sort of creamy yellow, but the thinner they are, the less yellow, the more creamy they look. Sort of thing. You haven't got the colour density of a big patch of it. So I just ran them around the edges, and yeah.
They weren't on the kit, but they weren't part of the kit.
No. I was going to say, just in regards to varnishes, and in the general subject, particularly of keeping your airbrush clean, the advantage of trying to clean an airbrush when you've been painting green or brown or whatever is, of course, is when you've put enough brush cleaner through it, the cleaner goes clear, and because you've taken all the paint out. You don't have that luxury when you are trying to flush out gloss or matte varnish, and the stuff can be as sticky as all hell, especially the matte, which seems to have sort of little fine particles in it. So be very careful and very thorough when you're cleaning your airbrush after using varnishes. And in that particular space of what we're talking about, Peter over here, our Mr. Airbrush Runway 13, sold me a little pot with a little nozzle-shaped hole at the top, and he said, put lots of blotting paper or tissue paper in there, and use that when you're cleaning. Blow it into there, and you do get a little bit of residual, spray emitting, but you're not getting clouds of it, and so it's safer and better for the whole workspace to use one of those. And if you go out to cafes and you get these little things that they give you, for to hold your toasted sandwich or whatever, save all of those that you can and stick them in the pot, and they soak up all of the paint and the cleanness. There we go. Last little safety tip there.
there's lots of those things downstairs in the cafe. Anyway, so yes, so with the canopy, future floor polish, which is an acrylic based. Right?
I've used it, but not successfully.
Oh, haven't you? You showed me this is excellent stuff. This is not featured. No,
I use that.
I'm surprised. I have used it, and it's good. So what it does is it makes it.
I've used it on canopies. Yes.
Exactly, that's what I'm talking about.
No, I thought it was in that.
No.
Canopies. Yes, it's the best thing to soak your canopies in.
Sorry, John. Please ask a question.
Maybe you can move the model into shots because it's off the screen.
Wait,
so
no, it's trade secret. No. Yeah.
So
Anyway, what I was going to start talking about canopies and two things with canopies. The preparation of the canopy so that it gives you a nice clear finish. The future floor polish, actually dipping the whole canopy in there and then carefully letting it drip and then letting it dry means you've got a much harder shell, so it's less likely to be scratched. Right? Also, yes, please.
Where can you get the future?
Good question. I got it from him, who got it from a friend in the United States. So I've looked around. It's a Johnson & Johnson product. No, it's not a Johnson & Johnson product.
There's several formulas.
Yes.
And there's new products that are apparently compatible with future, but you can't get the future.
So forget everything that I've said for the last 5 minutes. Just be careful with your canopies.
So there's no future in future.
There's no future in future. We've got a million of them. Anyway, so canopy mask.
I've got a spare one at home. I might be able to get into futures trading.
He took the microphone away from me for that. Anyway, so masks. So if you don't have specific masks for a particular kit, mainly it's aircraft, right? Because of the canopies, you can use the Tamiya tape, but you've got to be very careful and you've got to cut and you've got to have a lighting underneath. And I got very frustrated with the last kit that I made, which was the P40. Anyway, find these things. They may cost. They're not that expensive, but they can be applied, and you have the right coverage over your canopy mask. This is for a walrus, if anyone needs one. 48 scale FX walrus Mark 1. Anyway, can I keep going? Did you want to take this away? No, okay. Just in case. So yes, one of the other things that Dave has done with canopies is actually having thin strips of decal to do the framing, not just the yellow. Is that like an ejection? Anyway, not just the yellow around the frame, but the actual weather sealant. So it's actually you can use a decal itself on a canopy to do the framing, right? Yeah, you can. Look, I don't do that. I just find the other things that I do is best for me, and that's what you're going to find once you start building your model kits. And maybe down the track, a new technique comes along, you try it, it works better for you, right? The beauty about this hobby that we're involved in, especially now compared to what it was like 50 years ago, the options that we have, the kinds of paints, the kinds of decals, the masks, I don't know, the model kits themselves. Was it the printing thing where you can print 3D printing? You know, we've got all this available to us. I brought these are different pencils, different color pencils that have silver and red. You can just apply to do a bit of weathering, right? The dry brushing techniques that can help you enhance your cockpit. The order that I do a cockpit in is that I do the basic color. I put on the thing, the panel, the instrument panel, all that. Then I gloss it up, and then I apply a wash, right? Then I mat it up, and then I apply some. So I'm spending time just on the cockpit just to get it a little bit more realistic. I'm hoping that it looks okay, but this is something I've learned over the last 10 years, right? So applying paint and applying decals, there's tools and techniques, and just moving on to, have we covered all that? I think we have. I think we have. So one-on-one sessions. Dave and I are still looking for people that want one-on-one sessions. But don't forget the judges. The judges are the ones, even for modelling. Only for modelling. Well, so anyway, just to tell this little story. My wife had some friends over a few years ago, and yeah, exactly. Anyway, so her friend said, "Where's Steve?" "Oh, he's modelling." And they looked at her and going, and she said, "Oh, building scale." Oh, okay, that's it. So anyway, enough of that. You've got. What have you got?
I've got one last closing tip.
What's that?
I remember. I've got to tell you this. There was a TV show a long time ago, and the owner of a huge chain of hotels, worldwide chain of hotels, was asked what would be, if you had one tip, what would it be? And he said, put the shower curtain inside the tub. So one last tip, which has nothing to do with hotels, but one last tip. How many of you have got an airbrush? Use an airbrush.
Look at that.
How many of you clean your airbrush with thinners? Well, here's a tip. Go to Bunnings and get a big tin of brush cleaner and use the brush cleaner and blow that through your airbrush, and that will give it the best clean, because the thinners is designed to keep your paint liquid between the end of the nozzle and the time it gets to the model, and then it's designed to evaporate. The paint stripper or paint brush cleaner has a different viscosity and different properties, and it is designed to work inside your airbrush and clean out all the little bits of paint that you've left inside there. So there's your tip from me.
Hang on, John, sorry.
The chemistry of the paint.
That's a good point. I'm only speaking on behalf of enamel paints.
Mr. Enamel, okay.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you.